take your programs. On the inside is our declaration of principle. And with an open heart, allow yourself to recite these foundational truths of our philosophy. I believe in one God, one absolute power and first cause to all things. I believe that this power is perfect love, and it creates out of a desire to express love. I believe that all thought is creative, and how I choose to think creates my personal experience. I believe in the unity of all life and the immortality of the individual soul forever unfolding. I believe in the eternal goodness, the eternal loving kindness, and the eternal givingness of God to all. Please remain standing for December's song, Sacred One. Please turn to those around you and say, good morning. One of the beautiful things about prayer is it's as if we activate the light, activating the light in that darkness, bringing truth back. And it's very significant in this time of the year where darkness and the seasonal change, we have the opportunity to know that even in the midst of that, we are the light, and we are the light through prayer. So I invite you to get comfortable this morning as we enter into that sacred time, and we are led by our practitioner, Idella Veal.
Thank you, Reverend David. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Oh, it's a beautiful day that God has made, and what joy it is that we've all come together right here to share in this busting seasonal time. So I invite you to sit comfortably in your seats. Feet flat on the floor, hands in your laps. Taking a deep breath. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale again, the breath of life. And allow it to flow through every cell, every organ, every drop of blood in your body. I'm going to say this prayer in the first person and ask that you receive what I say as your own, whatever resonates with you. This is what I know and what I recognize, is that God is all there is. And all there is God. God is all-knowing, all-powerful, everywhere, all the time. God is my Santa Claus and my Saint Nick. And I am one with this forever evolving power of oneness and allness. I am the individualization of God, and I unify with God, and I invite the presence of God in and through all. Because what is true for me is true for everyone. I know that the Spirit of God within me is the source of all that I am. I came to this life fully equipped by God to stand in my truth and to own and claim my good. It's my inheritance. I recognize that I am already all that I want to be. I recognize right now that I am and I have all that I have been longing for in life. This spiritual power flows through me and in me right here, right now. I keep that switch on because it's always flowing. But it's up to me to allow it to flow. This is the same power that creates worlds and universes and moons and stars. I came fully equipped with it, and I give thanks for that. Oh, I know that I am divine wholeness and health. I know that I am abundance, prosperity, and more than enough. And love, love, love flows through me and to me. And I radiate it and I give it everywhere I go. And because that happens, it comes right back to me. So, with the utmost appreciation and thanksgiving, I say, thank you, God, thank you for all that I have. Thank you for this center. Oh, thank you for the staff. Thank you for that award. So with unwavering faith and absolute trust in the law that always says yes, 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 whatever you want, yes. And I receive that, and I allow it to flow through me and to me. I release these words to the law, knowing that it's done unto me to the degree that I believe. I know that all is well, as we say together, and so it is. Amen.
This morning we have three little wise men and one wise woman. We have Denise Pridgeon to sing solo with our choir, as well as the next guests that will be coming up on stage, Freddie and JB, Penny, and Jason Peterson. I had to look at them and make sure they were there. There they are.
Think about the generations and to say we want to make it a better world for our children and our children's children so that they know it's a better world for them and think if they can make it a better place.
You know, there are people dying. Syria is just one place. We're very fortunate. We're very fortunate to have the hearts of these 3 beautiful boys. So let us never forget how blessed we are. Thank you, guys. Oh my God, another Christmas story. Lord, baby Jesus. What can be said? What can be said? Oh, man. That was perfect. Thank you, Penelope. Thank you, stage moms. Those were Phoebe's 2 children, and for Lisa and Carrie. Thank you very much. It was Shakespeare that said that all the world is a stage, and that you and I are merely players, making our entrances and our exits. And as long as we are on a spiritual journey, I think you might find a deeper appreciation about that quote, because it invites us to look at our world as if it's observational, as if it's, some paths call it illusion, that illusion is actually just a vibration of what the collective subconscious or the collective racial consciousness of thought is across our world. That's what we experience. Other people call it holographic, that our world is this fragmentation of, again, that same collective mass thought. And I've always gravitated towards that as an explanation, because what we understand is the world is what we make it, but what that means is that your perception of the world might be very different than the person seated next to you, and it's the same world. And when Shakespeare said all the world is a stage, it kind of reminded me too that we gravitate towards those people who have the same taste in the creative arts that we do. So when you go to movies, don't you have a tendency to go to movies with people who like your same stuff, or that you respect their review or opinion of that movie? Somebody whose view you don't respect and they say, oh, it's the worst movie I ever saw, then you rush out to see it, because that's the way that works. And so as we think about that, we do that spiritually. We do that from our worldview as well. We gravitate to those people who seem to positionally and consciously hold a world that works for everyone, or at least has the potential to. And those people who don't see that, or can't see that, or who are unconscious to that possibility, we tend not to hang out with. And so we have our spiritual tribe, and we watch this play. And sometimes we remember in watching this play that we are the characters making our entrances and our exits. We also understand, too, that each of those characters are us. Not just one character. I don't just identify with that person, but I identify with all of the characters because they are a part of the collective of our human psyche. Carl Jung called this archetypes. He was very famous for relinquishing to the world the study and the fascination of archetypes, because we're all living through these archetypical choices and behaviors. An archetype is sort of a recurrent symbol. Sometimes it's called the collective inherent unconscious idea, or a pattern of thought, or an image. Something that is universally present within every single person's individual psyche. And we're not just one archetype. We're not just the father archetype or the mother archetype. We're an amalgamation of all of these characters. And so when you meld that with the fact of what Shakespeare said, that all the world is a stage and we are merely players, you begin to understand that you and I have a responsibility and a capability of the role that we play on that stage. And any great story is filled with archetypes. And some would call it the greatest story ever told, which is the Christmas story. Again, rich and full of archetypes. But they center around four basic ones. There is obviously the Great Mother, or the Divine Feminine. That would be Mother Mary. The interesting thing about archetypes, and that we get to consider, isn't that it just isn't one dynamic, but it holds in its potentiality the full spectrum of that archetype, meaning it has polarity. So Mother Mary is this end of the spectrum of the archetype of the Divine Mother, the great nurturer, the one that is pure, the one that is holy. In fact, she's attributed to virginal qualities because she becomes the portal by which something even more magnificent enters into the human experience. So she has to be held in this sacrosanct, beautiful, beatific energy. What do you think then, if that's that mother energy, what do you think is on the other end of the spectrum, or the other part of the prototype? Well, they say some species of mothers eat their young. So we'll just leave it at that. And somewhere we're in between, right? So that feminine divine energy, that archetype, the divine nurturer, the one that brings into our world a salvational, a healing component in its most purest form, is an archetype that exists within all of us. And so does the other end of the spectrum. And I can bet that there are many of us in here who have mommy issues. Because it seems like this time of year, well, all times of year, bring up our mommy and our daddy issues, right? And we didn't get from mommy what we wanted. And so the archetype of that mother that exemplified or played itself out into our birth mother might not necessarily be the virginal illuminated mother that is depicted in the Christmas story. But do not worry, do not fret, right? Because whatever it was the portal of our creation, was exactly, beautifully, perfectly designed for what it is that we came to master. I remember having a student years ago in another city, in another center, in a class once say, my life would be so much better if my mother had just been the Virgin Mary. He said, imagine growing up consistently being told that I'm the chosen one. Imagine growing up being told that my life is going to change the face of the planet, that I'm going to bring love to the planet. Imagine that kind of consistent message. Would we be different today than perhaps the messages that we received from the under end of that spectrum, right? But that's the archetype of that. And then, of course, that gave birth to what this whole season celebrates, is this divine child, this baby Jesus, which is the archetype of something divine yet completely vulnerable. So when you know the story, you know that it was vulnerable and weak, but yet it survived all of the odds. And despite the harsh and unwelcoming environment, the hostility of the powers that be and all the forces against him, the child not only survives, but he even flourishes. And so the Jungian analysis finds it striking that many other traditions always also have the same exact story. So that archetype replays itself, doesn't it, over and over, even in the Bible, because you have the same thing with Moses. You have the same thing with Joseph and the brothers who sold that Joseph into slavery. You have similar stories surrounding the Buddha, Heracles, the Greek hero, the Egyptian god Horus, and even the Hindu divine avatar known as Krishna. They all exemplify this divine child coming in with these marching orders, if you will, to overcome all earthly condition and to rise up transcendently into a divine, conscious, Christic understanding and awareness of life. So the divine child is that which appears in our awareness when we least expect it. So think about that. What is that? That's a pure thought that you have. So believe it or not, you have pure thoughts. Merry Christmas. But the fascinating thing is, what do you do with that pure thought? You see, the moment that the pure thought is birthed, the archetype of that pure thought, that divine child, if you will, wants to have life through you, you do several things. One is you ignore it. One is you say, oh, couldn't possibly happen. You begin to justify all the reasons why that thought can't have a life through you. Or, even through harsh conditions, you allow that thought to gain traction and birth in order to fully rise and be exemplified through your actions. And so that archetype plays out again through all of us. And so when you look at that particular divine child, obviously then the Christ child plays the one that lives and exemplifies that totally. Then the other one is what I just described, where that pure thought is birthed within us, but we don't give it room in the inn of our own heart and in our possibility and in our life. One of my favorite archetypes is Joseph the father. What's fascinating about Joseph, even in the early Greek and Egyptian celebrations and writings, there were no feast that celebrated Joseph. There were no homilies that were preached about him. It was as if he was this silent character. And the archetype then of Joseph is one of the guardian, hidden. In fact, when you look at paintings, even if he's in the painting, he's where? He's behind. He's behind the divine mother and the divine child. He's known as the energy of chivalry, that which comes in and supports. And so we too have this archetype then of the guardian, whereby we know in our heart of hearts, almost automatically, reaching out and serving the world. We don't need to be acknowledged for that. We're just there to do it. We do it because we love to do it. You know, that's where the Sanskrit word seva comes in. If you sign up for sacred service here at SLCA, we call it seva because it means that I show up to serve without an agenda. I just show up to serve. And so when we activate the archetype of Saint Joseph, which he came to be, we're activating then a sense of seva, where we just bring to the table of experience in human connection our gifts and talents without needing anything in return. I laugh sometimes when I am forced to watch reality television because I would never do that on my own. How the polar opposite of the archetype of Saint Joseph is always being displayed in those shows. It's like, see me, right? They're fighting for everything. What's that one, Dance Moms? Oh my God. Not that I haven't seen every episode, but it's like it's like they're pulling each other and clamoring in order to get to the light. That would be that archetype gone awry. Right? And so, again, on this world stage, us as the players, there are times when we do that, and then there are times when we don't. There are times when the ego takes over, and it's as if we feel as though something or an opportunity might be taken away from us. And so we get our feelings hurt, or we hold grudges, or we do whatever it is that doesn't align with that sacred seva energy. And then that blends into one of the most fascinating archetypes to me, and it's the archetype of the king. Who was the king during the time of Jesus' birth? Herod. And so, the archetype of the king is actually a very powerful archetype when that king then rules with his heart. When that king has a loving and a fostering and a nurturing nature for all of those in his kingdom. But again, when we look at polarity, we experience something like King Herod. Because you see, the three wise men traveling from the Orient, seeing this star, weren't quite sure what they were looking for. They just, through a vision, were led to come and find what was foretold to them to be the birth of a new king, a king for the people, a king that would activate that portal, that heart, that light amongst all. And so they were just following the star. And as they followed on their journey, whose court should they come to but King Herod's? And the word has already spread that that's what these wise men were doing, because the Magi back then were very stately people, important people. And so Herod invited them in and he said, "Tell me what you're doing, guys." And they said, "We're following a star because we're going to meet the king." "And tell me more about this king." "Well, it's a baby, and it is foretold that this baby shall be the leader of all." And so Herod then says to them, "I want to go too. Why don't you go find him and then come back and tell me all about it so I can go and worship at the feet of this new king as well?" Well, you know the rest of the story. What Herod was really doing was playing on those wise men, because the envy and the rage within him, the archetype of that king, which becomes vindictive and ego-driven and tyrannical, is brewing inside of him. And so the wise men never come back. That really upsets him. And so what does he do? See, all this is playing out, they say, over the course of 2 years. They never come back. They never tell him the location. Meanwhile, the vision has been given to the father, Joseph, to take Mary and the baby and to flee into Egypt, because Herod then makes an edict to kill all of the boy children 2 years or younger in that area. And that's how that Christ child is saved. And so when you think about that, you and I would say, "Oh, I could never be that kind of king." But you know, when I told you of the pure thought, when I reminded you that that pure thought, that undiluted, unpolluted field of potentiality that is wanting to be birthed within us every single day, we kill that thought. And so we become that archetype when we don't honor and respect ourselves fundamentally, when we don't begin to love and nurture these things. And so this narrative, this Christmas story, as we've always said, is not just about those characters somewhere in the Gospels of the New Testament of the Bible, but it is a narrative in all traditions of the individual human journey. And so when we think about that, we again step back a moment and we say, which of those players on that world stage that Shakespeare described, which role am I gravitating towards the most? Am I some of the divine child? Am I some of the divine mother nurturer? Am I some of that which is Joseph the guardian? Am I being chivalrous in the way in which I treat other people and in the world and my gifts to the world? In my kingship, am I actually one who serves all? Or am I tyrannical sometimes in feeling threatened and simply denying who and what I am? So all of those things are looked through the lens of a spiritual observationist. But if we don't do that, we just look at the world. We look at that play on that stage, and we go, my God, our country is continuing and taking off in a plutocracy. And when we look at that and we understand that, we realize the necessity of that story and of that event to happen, because the plutocracy says that the rich are in power and they're going to fix it for the little ones. But what it tells us is, spiritually, that no one is going to fix it for you, because you are here to stand up and to claim your own power. Not to even fix you, because spiritually none of us are broken. But to reclaim, to uncover that dynamism and that beauty within us. And so that realization, that turning point in the play on that stage is everything. That's your moment as the player, as the actor in that play. That is your turning point. That's the denouement that they say, where all of a sudden clarity comes in and the whole situation changes. That's our reawakening. That's the narrative of the Christ story, where you and I go, oh my God, I've been denying my divinity all of this time. And now is my opportunity to rise up and to realize and to stop expecting some other thing, some other one, some other form of government to come and do it for me, but for me to rise up. To rise up. And to begin to message out into the world, then I am a Saint Joseph, that I am a divine mother, that I am a divine child, that I am a goodly, godly king. And so I wear safety pins, or I make my communication such that I say that all are welcome here. That every race, every color, every creed, every sexuality, every path is a divine being, and that I will not accept marginalization. I will not accept a world that is being led by the archetype of any kind of Herodism that does not own, that does not revere, and that does not hold sacred all sentient life. So I want to ask you this morning, where are those archetypes in you? What roles are you playing? And now is the time for us to stand fully garbed on that stage and to take ownership of the beauty of all that that is. Somehow this led me to the poem by Alfred Tennyson. Alfred Tennyson did not have an easy life. He was from a large family, and almost all of his siblings had some challenge mentally. And they were impoverished. And even though he worked, and even though he gravitated towards writing poetry, and even though he managed to get into university, nothing was sticking or working for him, and he became despondent. And in his despondency, he had what is called a mystical experience, where all of a sudden that illuminated light and all of that darkness came through him. It transcended him. And he began to write his poetry from that energy. One of those poems from that time was called The Higher Pantheism. Pantheism simply is a description of God as universal in all things, what we subscribe to. And in this poem, The Higher Pantheism, he starts it off by saying, the sun, the moon, the stars, the sea, the hills, and the plains, are not these, O soul, the vision of that which reigns? In other words, isn't God in everything? And then the most famous line in this poem is, speak to him, thou, for he hears. This is directed to you and I. Speak to that God. Speak to that power, for that power hears. And spirit with spirit can meet. So Alfred Tennyson tells us now that I'm spirit, you're spirit, that we're speaking to spirit. So that must mean what? That I am a part of all that. I'm speaking to the higher archetype of who I am. And then he finishes, because closer is he than breathing, and nearer than hands and feet. How does it get any closer than our own breath? How does it get any more a part of us than our hands and our feet? So what happens then on that stage is this. We must own our divine nature. In order for us to have the experience that that divine energy is closer than breathing, closer than our hands and feet, is to take ownership of the fact of our power. To take ownership of the fact that this Christmas story is my story. It's your story. It's always been our story. And I don't care what level of darkness, I don't care what level of disconnect might have been transacting upon that stage up until now. It's time for the redemptive, reclaiming power of that narrative to come to light. It's beautiful this time of year. As we've always said, we somehow give ourselves greater permission to forgive ourselves. It's like as that calendar moves to January 1st, we go, okay, reset. You could have reset April 23rd. Any other time in the year. But I'm asking you, in these final weeks of this really crazy year, to sit with the power of that archetype and say, which one do I want to play? And here's the fascinating thing. The moment that we commit, the moment that we say yes to that higher exemplification of that, then all the other characters of the play begin to show up. If you're so afraid of claiming your power, your creativity, because of what might happen, then you will never be able to allow all of those additional characters to make their entrances and their exits upon your stage. Why? Because you're keeping them at bay. But if you say yes to that power, I don't need to know the how. I don't need to know the way in which this play ends. It's going to be like Nicholas Nickleby on Broadway. It's just going to run for weeks and weeks and years and years. It's just going to be never ending. But every single time I claim that higher vibrational archetype, a new character can rush in to my play. One that is in alignment with my vision, my purpose, what it is that I'm wanting, desirous to do. But who has to act first? I have to be able to act first. I have to be the one that initiates that dialogue, and the universe dialogues back with me. And initiate that dialogue, and the universe dialogues back with me. And initiate that action, and the reciprocal force of that action is brought back to me universally. I ask you to stop waiting for something from a plutocracy to make it right for you. It is right for you now. And as we've always said, we are the ones that we've been waiting for. So we're going to give birth to this divine child within us. What do you do on someone's birthday? The answer I was looking for was sing, happy birthday. So I want you to place your hand on your heart and place it on the heart of that divine child. And very softly and very tenderly, from the archetype of that divine mother of Saint Joseph, I want you to sing to the birth of that child very softly. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday, dear David. Happy birthday to me. And so it is. Thank you. She's doing a lot today, and probably today's not the day to call her up here, but I'm going to do it anyway. Penelope is in practitioner class. And I just want you to lead us in grateful giving, and then you'll already be here.
Thanks for the gift.
Did you see how I did that? See how I worked that in?
I love him. My teacher. Good morning, everyone. Aren't we honored to be together in community? I have grown, you have seen me grow, and I have experienced love and compassion and empathy, and I'm learning so much. So much that the steps in the process are so valuable. Just for a human being like me, like you, that the process is sacred. Thank you for showing up here in this loving spiritual community, which I call home, and now you call home too. Will you join me as we read together our affirmation for grateful giving as the choir enters in, please? I live in a universe of abundance as I freely and I joyfully give and join in the divine flow, and all that I share with life returns to me multiplied abundantly, and so it is. Thank you, teacher.
Hallelujah.
All right. Now you know. Now you know when I ask if you want to give to the staff. It's the staff that creates experiences like this. It's our last day. Before you leave, if you want to put anything in these red heart envelopes, that in addition to your tithes and offerings will go to the staff. We will disperse this week, and it is your appreciation and my appreciation to them. If our practitioners will come forth, and you can hand this to any leader outside when you go today. As our practitioners come forward, give yourself the opportunity of a divine prayer. Let that North Star lead you back to the center and the wholeness and the truth of your divinity. Begin today, this moment, to rewrite your play with one of these divine beings. And sacredly and beautifully, let us sing our closing song to the world. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. I am so Hi, I'm David Ault, and I simply want to say thanks. Thanks for taking the time to watch our broadcast here at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. We have a vision, and that vision is to reawaken all to their spiritual magnificence. And one of the ways that we are able to do that is through this very medium of broadcasting. So if you got anything out of this, if you felt in any way inspired, or if something spoke to you directly, then I extend an invitation to you to become a part of our family by donating. And there are many ways in order for you to be able to do that. One is to simply go to our website at slca.com, and there you will find all different kinds of prompts that will help you support what it is that we are doing here in Atlanta. One way is to become a pledger. That means that you decide on a monthly basis that you are going to help us with this vision. Another way is to donate through our management system called Fellowship One, another through PayPal, and another even easier way is on your cell phone. You can do what's called text to tithe, and that number is 404-796-7030. Again, thank you so much for your support, and I invite you to come back weekly to see what it is that we're up to. Blessings.